They said the dress code was light pastels. I showed up in black. Not a spiteful black. Not even defiant. Just honest. The kind of black you wear when you've spent a lifetime being the shadow behind someone else's spotlight. This wasn't about rebellion. It was about finally showing up as myself. The party was in Charleston, of course. Where else would my sister host her engagement party if not some glittering estate by the coast? All rented charm and generational wealth cosplay. I parked a block away and walked, heels clicking against cobblestones, my spine a little straighter than usual. Not because I expected kindness, but because I was tired of shrinking. I am 47, a judge, and for most of my life, I've been a footnote in family conversations. The older sister with a respectable job, the dependable one. While Avery, yes, her name is Avery, as if she were born with a monogram towel set, got the laughter, the attention, the second helpings of affection. No one asked what I wanted growing up. They just assumed I'd be fine. And for a long time I was, or at least I pretended to be. So when I stepped into that glowing garden, where fairy lights tangled like nerves and everyone wore that smug sheen of money well spent, I knew what to expect. Smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Compliments sharp enough to cut. And then, right on cue, Avery saw me, cocked her head with that performative surprise and asked, in a voice loud enough for the patio to hear, if I'd mistaken the party for a funeral. I smiled, said nothing. Her fiancé, some finance guy named Cole, one of those men who makes six figures and still splits dinner checks, laughed. Asked if I was always this dramatic or just allergic to joy. I could have let it slide. Could have played along, as always. But instead, I turned to him calmly and said I was a judge. Federal. Newly appointed. The air didn't shift, so much as stop. Someone coughed near the sangria station. A woman I vaguely recognized from Avery's book club sipped her drink like it might save her from witnessing what had just happened. And Avery, well, she blinked. Once. Twice. Then changed the subject like she hadn't just been gut-punched in designer heels. I stood there for a second longer, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. I wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. I thought I would be, but I just felt hollow. Not in a sad way. More like someone who finally found the source of a strange buzzing that had been bothering her for years and shut it off. I moved toward the bar. One of the younger cousins, the one who used to call me Auntie even though we're barely a decade apart, gave me a look that was part awe, part apology. I gave her a nod. Didn't need her pity. Didn't want it either. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was to be seen without explanation. The last time I'd visited Charleston before this, I was clerking for a circuit judge, driving a secondhand Camry, and renting a studio where the plumbing moaned like a haunted house. My parents hadn't even come to my swearing-in. Said the flights were too expensive. Meanwhile, they flew down for Avery's birthday that same year. Brought a fruit arrangement through TSA. No one had clapped for me then. But right now, in this moment, in this hush, it was the quietest applause I'd ever heard. And somehow the loudest. I didn't stay long. Just enough to sip one drink, let my presence linger like a perfume Avery couldn't wash off. Long enough to see our parents whispering by the patio heater, casting glances in my direction that didn't hold pride, just confusion, maybe a little discomfort. Like I'd rewritten a script they'd all agreed on without telling them. I walked the perimeter of the party, not looking for anyone, just moving. There was a photo wall by the fountain. Collages of Avery and Cole through the years, curated and overexposed. And there, tucked in one corner, a single photo from childhood. The two of us at Myrtle Beach, sand in our teeth, faces sunburned and smiling. I must have been 12. She would have been 9. She was holding my hand like it meant something. I stood there longer than I meant to. Because that picture, that was before the shift. Before the hierarchy. Back when Big Sister still meant hero, not placeholder. I remember that trip clearly. It was the last time I got the window seat without a fight. People like to ask judges if we're good at staying impartial. What they don't understand is that sometimes justice has nothing to do with fairness. It's about control. About making decisions in rooms where no one else knows what it costs you to stay quiet. I've spent my life being the one who's fine. The one who doesn't cause problems. The one who understands, explains, absorbs. I've worn that role like a tailored suit. Never questioned how tight it got over the years. Until tonight. Back at the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled through my phone. Not because I expected messages, but because it was something to do with my hands. No missed calls. A few court calendar updates. One email, marked unread, from 2 weeks ago. Subject line, thinking of you. It was from my mother. I never opened it. Not because I was angry. Anger would have been easier. But because I knew what was inside before I read a single word. Some half-hearted attempt at reconnection. Maybe a recipe. Maybe a link to an article about managing stress, like she used to send when I worked through holidays and she needed to feel involved. I tapped it open anyway. It was short. 3 lines. She hoped I was doing well. She heard Avery's party might be happening soon and thought it'd be nice if I came. Then a note about how proud they were of both our girls. The kind of sentence that's meant to sound equal, but feels like a coin toss. I didn't reply. That email sat there, glowing back at me like a bad penny. Unsent responses filled my head. Snarky ones, heartbreaking ones, honest ones. I typed one out months ago, saved it to drafts. Never hit send. It's still there. The draft is titled, I See It Now. Inside, just one sentence. I spent my life trying to be enough for people who only ever saw me when I disappeared. The thing about drafts, whether emails or expectations, is that they're easier to carry than send. Safer. You can write the truth in them, raw and ugly or beautifully restrained, and it won't touch the world unless you want it to. I must have rewritten that one line a dozen times over the years. Changed the punctuation. Added a sentence once about Christmas. Deleted it. Then put it back. I hadn't meant to carry it with me to Charleston. But I realized, sitting there in the hotel room with the scent of someone else's lavender linen spray thick in the air, that I never really left it behind. It was on every birthday card I never received. Every phone call I didn't get after promotions. Every casual dismissal dressed up as a compliment. When I was appointed to the bench, Avery sent a text. Not a call, just a text that read, "Wow, you really made it big time. Judge Judy vibes LOL." She punctuated it with a winking emoji and a photo of herself in a courtroom Halloween costume from college. That was her version of support. My parents called the next day, but the conversation quickly shifted to how Avery was thinking of launching a podcast. A podcast, as if I hadn't just achieved something people work their whole lives for. I told myself then that I was fine, that I didn't need their praise, that I wasn't doing it for them. And maybe that was partly true. But the sting wasn't from the lack of applause. It was from the fact that they didn't even understand the magnitude of the moment. Like I told them I want a cakewalk, not a federal judgeship. I closed the email and looked out the window. The Charleston skyline at night is quiet in a way that feels staged, like it's trying to look reflective. The kind of city that wants you to believe it remembers things it never lived through. And in that moment, I realized something that settled in my chest like a stone. They didn't forget me. They just never expected me to become someone they'd have to remember. I don't know why that photo from Myrtle Beach wouldn't leave my head. Maybe because it was the last time I looked at my sister and didn't feel smaller. Not less accomplished, not less loved, just less everything. We were kids. No roles yet. No descentment. Just sunburn and sand and a half-deflated beach ball we kept kicking down the shore like it mattered who it belonged to. It had been a long time since I'd thought about that trip. Long enough to forget most of the details. But not the window seat. That moment clung to me like old perfume. I'd asked for the window seat first, calmly, politely. And I got it. Avery had pouted, crossed her arms, made a dramatic scene about getting car sick. But for once, my parents didn't cave. My mom even said something like, she planned this trip, let her have the window. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but was. I remember leaning against the glass while we crossed state lines, tracing the condensation with my fingertip, watching pine trees blur into ocean air. It was the first time I felt like maybe I mattered. And the last time no one challenged that feeling. After that, the window seat was always hers. Every flight, every road trip. If I spoke up, I was told to stop making things difficult. Let her have it, they'd say. She gets motion sick. You're more flexible. Always framed like a compliment, but really just code for don't rock the boat. She's the one we worry about. We assume you'll manage. I always managed. That was the problem. So when I sat in my hotel room, knees pulled to my chest, the smell of the cheap lavender spray, trying too hard to be luxurious. That memory looped itself like a quiet song I couldn't turn off. I kept seeing that drive, that seat, that version of myself who didn't yet know how much easier it would be to fade into the background than fight to be seen. And maybe that's why the photo got to me. Because the girl in that picture, she wasn't hiding yet. I opened the drafts folder on my phone again, scrolled past the long one, I see it now, and started a new note. Typed one sentence. I kept the window. That was it. No editing. No signature. No performance. Just a truth I'd carried for decades. A declaration so small and so strange it almost made me laugh. But it meant something to me, because it reminded me that there had been a version of myself who fought for space, who asked for what she wanted, who got it, and didn't apologize for it. I didn't send the message. Didn't need to. But I read it twice, 3 times, then saved it. Another unsent message. Another small victory. I didn't get the spotlight. I didn't get the stage. But I kept the window. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. By the time I returned to my parents' house that afternoon, the party decorations were gone. Only a few deflated balloons clung to the hedges like they hadn't gotten a memo. I wasn't there for another conversation, and definitely not for reconciliation. But I needed to see them one more time while the weight of last night was still fresh. My father answered the door. He looked surprised, like I was a ghost from a dream he didn't want to remember. My mother called out from the kitchen before she saw me. Her voice too cheerful, too practiced. And when she did see me, the brightness faded. She asked if I was okay. She always asks that when what she really means is, "Are you still quiet enough not to make this uncomfortable for us?" I told her I was stopping by before my flight. That was all. They offered tea. I declined. Sat on the edge of the same couch I used to sleep on when relatives visited, and I gave up my bed without being asked. That couch still smelled like lemon polish and restraint. There were no apologies. Not from them. Just vague inquiries about work, about whether I'd seen Avery's photos online. I said no. I didn't mention that I had muted her accounts years ago. Not out of anger, just necessity. Then, out of nowhere, my father asked how long I planned to keep the distance. That was the phrase he used. Keep the distance. Like I was orbiting too far from some gravitational pull I owed them. Like I had floated too far from the family narrative, and he was just now noticing I wasn't coming back. I wanted to laugh. But instead, I said something I hadn't planned. Long enough to feel like I still belonged to myself. The silence that followed was cleaner than any apology they could have fumbled through. I didn't stay long. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Just long enough for my mother to fidget with her ring the way she always did when she didn't know what to say, and for my father to ask if I needed help getting to the airport. That offer, I declined with a smile. Told them I had a car. I always had a car. They just never asked where it came from. Before I left, my mother walked me to the door like she used to when I'd visit during law school. Back then, I'd take the late-night Greyhound to save money and arrive half-dead with my casebooks and under-eye circles, hoping for warmth. Most nights, she barely looked up from her puzzles. This time, she reached for a hug. I let her, not out of obligation, but as a final courtesy. A punctuation mark. She said to call more often. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because I didn't want to lie. We both knew I wouldn't. We both knew she'd still leave me off the group texts, still call Avery first, still forget my birthday until Facebook reminded her. But in that silence, I wasn't bitter. I was just done. There's a kind of grief that doesn't need tears. Just space. And I had finally made enough of it to stand on my own. I walked to the rental car with my heels in my hand, asphalt warm beneath my feet, and the Charleston humidity curling every edge of me. When I opened the door, my phone buzzed. A new message. It was from Avery. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because this time, I wasn't rushing to understand or fix or explain. This time, I was driving away with the window down. And the silence was mine. I didn't open her message right away. Not out of pride. Not even out of defiance. I just wasn't in a hurry anymore. For once, her words could wait on me. It sat there for nearly a day, blinking on my screen like a lifeline thrown too late. That familiar preview, "Hey, didn't mean to," followed by the dots of guilt try and style itself as casual. I kept swiping it away every time it popped up. I made coffee, went for a walk, called my clerk to check in on a case, read 2 chapters of a novel I couldn't remember starting. But eventually, curiosity tugged at me. Not the kind that comes from hope, but the kind you feel when picking at an old scab just to see if the skin beneath still remembers. I opened it. Her message wasn't long. It never is when Avery feels cornered. Just enough to cast herself as harmless. A soft buffer between intention and impact. She wrote that she didn't mean to embarrass me, that she was just teasing like always, that people had overreacted, that Cole didn't realize who I was, as if the problem wasn't how they treated me, but how everyone else happened to notice. But it was that last line that cinched it. He didn't know who you were. I read it once, then again, and then again, slower. Not because I didn't understand, because I understood it too well. He didn't know who I was. That wasn't an apology. That was the diagnosis. Because for years, I had shaped myself into someone convenient. Quiet, accomplished, non-disruptive. The one who remembered birthdays, but was forgotten at her own promotion party. The one who sent care packages, but wasn't on the holiday card. The one who stayed in the background, not because she wanted to be small, but because making space for everyone else became second nature. So no, he didn't know who I was. But neither did she. And now that I'd stepped out of the outline she had drawn for me, it startled her. My silence had always been her comfort. She counted on me not to speak, not to show up, not to stand there in black and make the air shift like a thunderclap. She didn't expect to lose control of the story, and I wasn't giving it back. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, but because I'd already said everything I needed to. Not to her, to myself. Instead, I opened my phone, found that old draft again, the one that started with, "I kept the window," and for the first time, I added something new beneath it. Not a sentence for her, a sentence for me. The view is better when you're not begging to be seen. Then I saved it, not as a message, as a record, a receipt, proof that somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for someone else to validate my worth and started writing it down myself. There's a strange peace that comes when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop performing the version of you that makes everyone else comfortable. I didn't realize how much of my life had been spent in that act, smiling on cue, shrinking to fit, being fine when I wasn't. That Sunday, I sat in an airport terminal with my boarding pass in one hand and my phone in the other. My flight wasn't for another hour, but I didn't mind the wait. I wasn't restless. I wasn't anything. Just still. I looked around at the other travelers, families juggling juice boxes and backpacks, couples whispering about gate numbers. No one noticed me. And for once, that felt good. Not like erasure. Not like dismissal. Just anonymity. I wasn't the sister, the daughter, the reliable one. I was just a woman in an airport. 47. Quiet. Whole. Avery didn't write again. I didn't expect her to. She'd thrown her rope, and I hadn't grabbed it. That's not how we've ever worked. She reaches, and I reach back. She fumbles, and I cover for her. But not this time. This time, I'll let the silence stretch between us, not as a punishment, but as a new boundary. And my parents? I imagine them back home, wondering if they'd said the wrong thing. Probably not dwelling too hard. Probably saying something like, well, she's always been sensitive. That's how they explain me. That's how they reduce me. But now, their words don't stick the same. I'm not trying to change their narrative anymore. I'm just writing my own. When they call next, and they will, I'll answer, maybe, or maybe I won't. Not out of spite, but because I no longer feel responsible for being the one who keeps everything intact. The flight began boarding. I didn't rush to stand. I wasn't afraid of missing anything anymore, because I already knew who I was taking with me, and who I was leaving behind. The plane leveled out somewhere over Georgia, and I looked out the window, not because the view was special, but because I could. Somewhere below, small towns flickered into morning, their rooftops catching the light like loose change scattered across an old table. I wasn't thinking about Avery, or our parents, or even the message I never sent. I was thinking about that moment at the party, the one where the room stopped, where the music dulled, and everyone looked at me like they had just realized I had been there the whole time. That was the moment I came for. Not revenge, not drama, just recognition. I didn't need them to clap or cry or apologize. I only needed them to see me, to sit in their own discomfort long enough to know that I had arrived. Not just at the party, but at something larger. At myself. There's no word for that feeling. It's not vindication. It's not triumph. It's quieter than that. It's the stillness that comes after years of shouting into pillows and typing drafts you'll never send. It's the peace of no longer needing to be louder to matter. I adjusted the air vent above my head and closed my eyes. The cabin was warm, the kind of warm that makes you drift. Somewhere inside me, the girl with the window seat smiled. And this time, no one was reaching over her to take it away.